Hi, everybody. This is Bob Goodwin, and welcome to another episode of Career Club Live. Today's episode is brought to you by Career Club Corner, our weekly Thursday at 1 o'clock Eastern Time group coaching calls. They are free for all job seekers, and they will always be free. But if you or someone you care about is in job search and they would benefit from some expert career coaching, we'd invite you to go to career.club. Just click on the main banner, and that it will get you registered for Career Club Corner. Again, group coaching every Thursday at 1 o'clock. So today I am super excited. For those of us who are in the career coaching, job search coaching business, it's actually pretty cool because people are very collaborative and you end up meeting a lot of great people. Today's guest is Sam Owens, and Sam's the founder of Sam's Career Talk, where he provides coaching services and helps people find their dream jobs. Awesome. He's also a CMO who's worked for 3 multi-billion-dollar companies in the consumer packaged goods industry and now runs marketing for Freezing Point, makers of Frazzle. He lives in Denver, Colorado with his wife, Gina, and their 4 kids. He's also the author, and this is what we'll be talking about today, of I Hate Job Interviews. So if you're a job seeker, ever been a job seeker, that might be a sentence that's fallen from your lips. And we're going to learn more about how to not hate job interviews quite so much. And so with that, Sam, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, Bob. Great to be here.
No, it's great to have you. Thanks so much. So before we dive into the book, which I am super interested in, thank you for sending me a preview version of that. I loved it. Is just a couple icebreaker questions for folks to get to know you a little bit. So I said you're in Denver. Were you born and raised in Colorado?
No, I'm from Walnut Creek, California, San Francisco Bay Area.
Oh, awesome. So how long have you been in the Denver area?
So we've been here for about 10 years, but we've been all over for my career. So we have 4 kids. Each kid was born in a different state. So we have the oldest is born in Virginia, then Utah, then Nebraska, then Colorado. Our youngest was in Colorado. So we either have to stop having kids or we have to move. Those are the options.
That's funny. So we have 4 kids too. So my empathy level is really, really high. I think we've moved 7 times.
Okay. Yeah.
And I always say creditors are very persistent. So we just
Yeah, exactly.
but that's cool. That's awesome. And it's a real blessing. And then where did you go? Did you go to school in California or where did you go to school?
So I went to school. I went to undergrad in Idaho, and then my graduate, I got an MBA actually at Brigham Young in Provo,
Awesome.
Utah. And I cannot believe it, but I graduated my MBA in 2009. I can't believe it's been that long.
Time goes by. And when you have kids, man, it goes by really fast.
Yes, that's right.
So I mentioned a little bit that you're a marketer.
Yeah.
Do you mind just maybe very briefly walking us through just a little bit and how you've ended up at Frazzle?
Yes, absolutely. So I came out of business school with the mentality that I want to get with a big company that's going to give me great training. And then later on, I'm going to try to get to maybe a smaller company that's more high growth. Mm-hmm. Everyone's got their own strategies. That just kind of happened to be mine. I just wanted to get that training from a big company. And so I went with ConAgra Foods right out of business school. So I interned there. And then so I worked on stuff like Marie Callender's pot pies and Healthy Choice and stuff like that. So frozen meals, very big business, very big category. And was a great experience, met amazing people, got, kind of cut my teeth. Not an easy experience, it's kind of putting in your time, working hard. You're kind of at the bottom and you're kind of doing the grunt work and grinding it out. And then after 5 years, I thought, okay, frozen food's good, but it's kind of, it's big, it's good, but it's kind of flat, at least at the time it was kind of slow growth. And so I said, well, where's an opportunity where I could go a little bit more high growth? And I wound up getting into organic and natural foods and went to White Wave Foods, which was Silk Almond Milk and Horizon Organic Milk and stuff. And I just saw a really big growth opportunity there. And after a couple of years there, the Danone Yogurt Company wound up buying that division. And so then I worked for Danone for a while. So now it's been, 12 years, and I had felt like I had gotten kind of the big company kind of credibility, training, kind of knew, at least to it as best you could, knew what I was doing in the marketing world. And so that said, okay, now I'm interested in going a little bit smaller, maybe something more high growth where I can get a piece of the action and maybe put a bigger stamp on what I'm doing. And so I did Cali'flour Foods, which was a cauliflower pizza crust company.
Sure, of course. Yep.
For a little while. Great experience. Company was in a little bit more, I think actually now there's two, there's Cali'power and Cali'flour. I worked for Cali'flour. I think that company is now, they've actually closed. So good business, but it was just really tough. We had our own manufacturing facility and we were making, fresh cauliflower cheese, very expensive to make. And so in the process, I kind of read between the lines that this is going to be a tough business, but I loved that it was small. I loved the people I was working with. And so it was at that point that a friend from business school who runs Frazzle called me and said, "Hey, I just got a marketing question for you. What would you do about this or that?" And I said, "Well, let's maybe talk about what if I worked for you?" He said, "Oh, that's interesting." And so we just got to talking, and I kind of did a little moonlight arrangement for them for a few months, and it was good. And so now it's been over 2 years since I've been there, and I'm having
that's awesome. Okay, yeah. And that's awesome. You and I share a lot in the marketing CPG arena, which I think will actually carry forward into what I suspect are some of the principles that we find in the book. Sure. And then lastly and quickly, what do we find? You have 4 kids, so I probably already know the answer to the question. What do we find you doing when you're not at work?
Yeah, it's a great question. So 4 kids, 2 of them are teenagers. So you can imagine that. And so we spend time, we have an extended family cabin in West Yellowstone, Montana. So
that sounds terrible.
I know. I was actually just there last week. My son graduated high school. We took him on like a motorcycling and fishing trip and stuff. So
nice.
We first and foremost, we spend as much time as possible there as we can. And then, I'd say the rest of it is going to gymnastics meets and volleyball games and, doing all those things where life just got super busy and crazy. But we love it. We love it.
Cool. Awesome. Well, that was so much fun. I learned a few things along the way there. So that was very cool. So thank you. So let's just kind of get right into it. What was the I guess maybe how did you get into career coaching?
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like that's probably the extension of what made the book come about.
Yeah. As you know, in CPG companies, big companies, there's opportunities to get involved in recruiting and kind of training and stuff like that. You can kind of do extracurricular things. Even you're expected to do extracurricular things. And I just always had an interest in kind of the training element. I would train on data storytelling and different marketing things, and just became really interested in this training, speaking space, mentoring, coaching. And said, you know what, I'd be interested in writing a book. And so I actually have a book before this one that I self-published. It's called The 8 Career Skills You Didn't Learn in College. Mm-hmm. And I wrote that book because I noticed all these things in corporations that were making people successful that I never learned in college. Like, how do you deal with a tough boss? Or how do you navigate managing other people or telling a great story or giving a great presentation? Mm-hmm. So I wound up writing this book. I tried to get it published traditionally, and the agents said, "Well, you don't really have much of an audience, So, and that's a lot of times what they care about most is what's your platform, what's your audience." Okay. And I think the book probably didn't hook people in the same way that my new book did. And so I wound up publishing that book, and then said, well, I guess I'm going to just start building an audience as well. So I started posting on LinkedIn, getting into it. Pretty soon I was taking clients, and I noticed that as I showed clients the book, there was a lot of energy around one chapter, which was the skill was called evolving, but it was about job interviews and resumes and stuff like that. That was getting a lot of interest. And I thought to myself, man, I wonder if I could do a book I wonder if I could take that chapter and just do a book on that. And what I found, and I was concerned that it wouldn't fill up a whole book. I thought, it was just a chapter, but as I got more into it, I realized that there is so much to the job interview. First of all, the stakes are so high. second of all, you can't outsource it. You can get a resume writer or something, but there you just, with a job interview, you're sitting down for 45 minutes and it's just you. There's no do-overs, there's nothing. It's just you. And so with those kind of stakes and that kind of stress and anxiety, I thought, man, there's something really interesting here. And so I created this title, which is what most of my clients kind of expressed to me in our first meeting, which is, I hate this. This is the worst. And thought, man, what if I could create a book out of this that shows the system I use and be useful? So that's kind of the journey. And, just kind of one thing led to another. That's how I got to this book and where it is. And then HarperCollins wound up being interested in it and picked it up and it launched yesterday.
Yay. Well, congratulations. So we're recording this on what is today? June the 5th?
Wednesday the 5th.
The 5th. So June the 5th. So congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thanks.
So let's just sort of kind of start off with, at a very high level, what's the basic principle? What are the principles that you want somebody to pull from this?
Yeah. I think if I would start at the main, if someone says, all right, let's talk about job interviewing, because what people usually ask me is, what's the one thing I can do to stand out in an interview? If I go to speak to college students or something, what's the one thing? And the answer I give, they usually don't like, which is, the one thing is everything. There is no one thing. It's kind of like a Kung Fu Panda, the big reveal at the end where Po is trying to get the secret sauce from his dad, the noodles. And he goes, there is no secret ingredient. There is no secret sauce. And so if there's one thing that I want to get across, is that interviewing is a learned skill and that it is a matter of practice. And most people believe that interviewing is like, well, I'm pretty charismatic. I'm pretty good with people. I'm sure I'll be fine. And what I've learned is charisma is great and it's a leg up and it helps as a start. But by no means does that mean you're going to be the best interviewer of all your competition in a competitive interviewing environment. And so that's kind of the first thing I lay out, to say, hey, sorry, I hate to break it to you, but you're going to have to prepare for 10 hours for your next interview. And so that's probably the first principle. And then after that, the book lays out a step-by-step process for preparation, even provides a checklist on things that you need to do. One would be, for example, what I call get inside information, which is terrible in finance. You don't want to get inside information in the financial world, but in job interviewing, if you do it right, it's actually a really good thing. It actually helps people. It actually impresses companies. And so I want people to put away the laptop, put down the phone, and actually, put down their smartphone, but actually hop on a phone and talk to people, or ask to take people to lunch, to actually understand what's going on at these companies and get the information they need to do well. The next phase would be, I kind of go into, here's how you craft your power stories and your power examples. Don't try to anticipate, 1,000 different questions. Bucket your answers or your stories into different categories based on the job description, and make sure when you go into that interview, okay, I got these 10 stories that I can draw from that are just amazing. And then after that, I go into very specific question types and just kind of get into it. The introductory question, the behavioral question, the case question.
Okay, let's go through some of this stuff.
Yeah,
this
let's
is
do
all
it.
Great. So first of all, on the preparation, like, amen. And, but I was on the phone with a client as recently as this morning, and I was sharing with him, like, I know it sounds like a lot of work, but, the calmness, the poise, the confidence that you're going to exude because you prepared is like going to do you a tremendous amount of good. It's going to give you clarity and peace of mind in the middle of, as you said, this very high stakes conversation that you're having.
That's right.
So massively agree with that. And then on the stories, again, this is what I love about our community is, there's a lot of crap advice, but there's a lot of really high quality people like you out there that are what I teach and what I believe are the right things. So you don't need 100 answers for 100 questions. You need a playlist of like 10. The trick is knowing the attributes of those different stories and how to kind of shape them to the situation. And I know we'll get into this in more detail in a minute, but just that idea of, dear listener, you don't need 100 stories for 100 questions.
That's right.
You need a core list of questions.
That's right.
And stories that you can repurpose to meet the need of the individual that you're talking
That's
to.
right. Small tweaks in the moment.
Yes. Yeah. So let's just kind of get down to the first thing that somebody gets asked. And I know you've got a whole thing on this, and I really I can't wait for this. Is Sam, so great to meet you. Thanks so much. Have a seat. It's great to have you in today. So I've seen your resume and everything, but tell me about yourself. I'd love to hear about you.
Yes, that's right. This is the introductory question, right? Whether it's phrased as tell me about yourself, walk me through your resume, why are you here? It's all the same thing. They're all asking the same thing. If they could ask what they really wanted to ask, it would be, tell me why, in 3 minutes, why you are the perfect person for this job, and why this is going to be the best conversation of my day, because I can stop interviewing people, which I don't want to do, by the way, because it's not core to my job. And tell me why I can just be like, yes, thank goodness I don't have to do this anymore, because I can just take this person. Yep. That's what they would ask. They might throw in, and please do it quickly because I'm in a hurry. They might throw that in too. But instead they say, tell me about yourself. And I think one mistake people make is they assume that this is just a warm-up question. Oh, well, I like long walks on the beach, and I'm, whatever, like, let's just warm up and get to know each other. And I think that this question is time. It's game on. It's okay. This is my opportunity to really demonstrate 3 things. 1, that I have relevant experience for this position. 2, that I excel at what I do. So in my prior positions, I didn't just have relevant experience, but I actually was a high performer. And 3, that I'm really interested in this job. And I think if you can do those 3 things in the first 3 to 4 minutes, I think you're in great shape. And the way you do that is you start by walking through the experiences of your resume, highlighting the ones that are the most important to the job description. And as you do that, you weave in a couple things. Maybe and then I was selected to run this project, or I was promoted, or then I was given more responsibility, or then I saved the company this money. You weave in certain results to show, okay, this person doesn't just have the responsibility, but this person is, I can tell this is a high performer. This person is good. And then after you walk through the experience, then you need to almost weave this story that all the stars have aligned to make this thing just the perfect fit. You can talk about why you're so interested in the company, whether it's, I love my current job, but there are certain things that I'm not getting that this company I know will provide. And that's why I'm so interested. But you want to weave this story that makes it look, it's almost like if you make a crude comparison to dating, you want to show that you're good for them, but you also want them to feel like, that you really want to be with them as well. There's that give and take. Right. And you want them to walk away thinking, okay, I think this person actually would take this offer if I got it. So it's a lot to ask in the first 3 minutes, but I think if with practice, it can be done, and it can set the tone for the rest of the interview.
How do we do that though, in a way that isn't rambling? Because that's something that so many candidates struggle with.
That's right.
But I have to tell you everything right now because I might forget it, or if I don't say it now, like I blew my. How do you do that without rambling?
Yeah. So, of the 10 hours that I recommend, half of that is practice. Some of it's getting inside information, some of it's whatever, but half of that is practice. And the reason is that we think, and I use this example in the book, which is Hitch. There's this, if you've seen it, there's this scene where Hitch, Will Smith, he's the date doctor, and he's teaching Albert Brenneman, Kevin James how to dance. And he says, all right, let's review like your dancing skills. And he goes, it's all right. I got that. It's fine. And he's like, no, what do you mean you got that? He's like, I have to see it. And then Kevin James, starts dancing. And of course it's a total disaster. And it's like, he slaps him and stuff. But that scene, it's like one of the best scenes ever, but I think it applies so much to job interviewing, because there's so many times you think, all right, yeah, I understand that conceptually, so I probably could do that. But with practice and you actually do it, you start, even when you're saying it, you start to think to yourself, okay, this isn't coming out as good as I thought it would. I am rambling. I'm not doing as well. And so my thing is, everyone does that. Just do that in your practice session, and then you won't have to ramble and feel that regret right as you're interviewing, which I've felt before. I've felt like as I'm speaking in my mind, I'm thinking I should have practiced this. I should have practiced this, because I'm rambling. And so, yeah, I think I've seen people really tighten it up with just a little practice and feedback, whether it's with a coach or even with someone, just a friend or something, just having an accountability source that they can practice with.
Yes.
Improves. I mean, in my clients, the difference I see between mock interview 1 and mock interview 2 is like, they're like 90% there just by doing that.
Yeah, it's such great advice. And when I was reading the book and came to that section, I'm like, yes, thank you so much. Because even me, like when I did my very, very first podcast, I was freaked out just on being able to say, hi, my name's Bob Goodwin, president and founder of Career Club. Welcome to the first episode of Career Club Live. I literally walked around my neighborhood like for an hour just saying what was really like 15 seconds.
Yeah.
I needed to hear myself say the words.
That's right.
And that's the difference, because like, let's say that I've got my stories written out, right? And I call this humming is, okay. And then, yeah. Okay. I got this. And it's like, no, that is not practicing. That's called reading, which is very different. And you're a very good reader, but you've got to hear yourself say the words. And where you start to stumble and you go, God, that was stupid. Let me press rewind and start over. Because as you say, and again, this is just, interviews are game day. There is no do-over. And so when you can hear yourself say something, go, that was clumsy. Let me try that again. Yeah. Well, do that in front of somebody who's not going to hire you, right? Or maybe hire you.
Yeah. So I love that concept of humming. That's funny. Yeah, I totally know what you mean. You're like, oh, yeah, no. Okay. You run it through in your mind. You run it through in your mind and you think it's fine. And then it's like, well, actually, when you're sitting there and there's already tension because you're in an interview, it feels different,
Yeah. What do you find? This is, I think, so deep at the root of why people don't interview well, which is fundamentally a lack of confidence.
Yeah.
Help us kind of understand your thoughts on that. And I think we know some of it because I think we just said it, but how to build confidence so that I actually feel good about this.
Yeah. Chapter 1 is convince your harshest critic. Convince your harshest critic, which is you. You're your harshest critic. And the way to build it, I mean, I always say, like, I wish I had some sort of meditation technique for you or something that would be easy. But I've found that true confidence only comes on the other side of hard practice and just getting after it. That's where real confidence comes. Sometimes people say, well, I'm not going to be as confident if I practice because like that. And I say, well, being yourself is an interesting concept because, I mean, I could be the self that yelled at my kids last night to go to bed. I could be that self. That's still myself. So I kind of say, how about your best self? How about your most practiced self? And so I think there's a couple elements here. Obviously, we talked about practice, but in the book, I talk about confidence myths or job interview myths, or what I call BITs, bad interview thoughts, which are these things that you tell yourself that kind of destroy confidence that aren't necessarily true. One of them might be, hey, interviewing is mostly for extroverts. I'm an introvert, so it's just harder for me. It's like, well, that's not true. Introverts can be very good, if not better than extroverts at interviewing. It really doesn't have anything to do with it. It's about practice. Another myth, Oh, job interviewers make up their mind in the first couple minutes, so I don't really need to prepare beyond that, whatever.
Oof.
Like, well, that's not true. That's kind of repeated, but that's not really actually the data doesn't even support that. Some do, but the majority of job interviewers actually make up their mind in the first 15, 30 minutes. And so you really should practice beyond that. So there's all these myths and things that we kind of tell ourselves that destroy confidence. So I think busting those is probably the first step, and then saying, all right, time to practice.
Yeah, for me, building on what you're saying is confidence is not the same as cocky, and it's not the same as arrogant.
That's
Okay,
right.
because I think sometimes people mishear confident. Most of the clients, and maybe this is just the current job environment that we find ourselves in or whatever, are significantly lacking in confidence.
Yeah.
And which is basically self-belief.
Yeah.
And, when this is branding at its core, which is what are your convictions, what you actually believe is true.
Mm-hmm.
And you laid out some things that aren't true, but the candidate needs to know what she really believes that she's good at, that she cares about, that she can excel at, and just present that. But you have to do the work on the front end to know kind of what your brand pillars are. And then whether that resonates or doesn't resonate, it's kind of on the interviewer. But as long as you are presenting your best self with what you believe is true about you, what you're passionate about, what you're proficient at, where you excel, where you want to take your career to the next level, then you're going to genuinely convey that. And when we do that, we sit up straighter, we modulate differently, we smile more, our eyes are more open. And the way I say it is, the beautiful thing about confidence is it's contagious. When you believe, you make me believe.
That's right.
And so much of this is in your head.
It is.
Right. And that's what I loved about, what you were sharing in your book is again, this notion of confidence, but confidence can be earned. Right. And I think it is, as you say, through preparation. So let's use that as a segue to get into basically stories and, power examples.
Yeah.
Could you talk to us what you mean by that?
Yes. The idea behind power examples is, first and foremost, a careful study of the job description. People sometimes don't realize what a gold mine the job description is. It's basically telling you the types of skills they're looking for, hence the types of questions they're going to ask. And so when I am preparing for a job or helping a client, always I ask for the job description. Mm-hmm. And I can pick out usually pretty quickly, okay, you're going to be asked a strategic thinking question. You're going to be asked a question about how you manage details. You're going to be asked a question about your leadership style. Mm-hmm. Right. And so if you can do that first, you write those down and you have 6 or 7 skills that you say, okay, these are the things they're trying to assess. Then you have a start on what stories that you want to develop. Okay, I want to do 2 leadership examples. 2 times I demonstrated leadership. Now I want to do 2 times where I showed analytical ability, and I want to do 2 times where I did this. And pretty soon you have, about 10 kind of examples, and that serves as like the foundation for what you're going to talk about and the stories you're going to tell. You don't have to at this stage yet, fully flesh them out. We talk about that in another chapter, which is creating, I call them SPAR stories, and we can talk more about that. But this is the foundation where it takes, half hour to an hour to say, all right, I can think about these different experiences. And now I got 10 kind of power examples, power stories that I can build from.
Yep. And what makes them power? What do you mean by power?
It's your best stuff. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, yeah, I can give you 20 examples of when I demonstrated leadership, but these 2 really just seem to kind of nail it for the job interview. Like, these are the ones. And I say power because the temptation is not to eliminate the other 18, but you really should eliminate the other 18. Remember, you got 45 minutes. They're going to ask you 1, maybe 2 questions about leadership. It's like, play the hits, like. You know,
Sam, I'm bragging. This makes me feel like I'm bragging. I'm very uncomfortable doing that.
I know. Let's just address that head on. What I tell people when they say I feel like I'm bragging, I say, look, it's not bragging if you are telling a story based on facts. There's a big difference between saying I am a great leader and telling a story with facts that just lets them, the only conclusion they could come away with is that you're a great leader. Yeah. I mean, it's just facts at this point, right? And so that's another reason for practice, is because you can basically walk them through a story that almost takes you out of it. I mean, you're the star of the story, but you're just telling the story. So you're not saying, oh, I'm so great and I'm this and that. You're just telling the story. And in the end, they're thinking, yeah, this person really did do that. Therefore, they're a great leader.
Is there, this probably, I'm going to ask this question really clumsily. We've got our resume, right? And our resume, in theory, has got bullet points on it that, right. I was in this role and I accomplished X, Y, Z at this role. Shouldn't that be the foundation for a lot of these stories?
Yeah, it definitely can be. I actually think, too, that when I go over resumes with people, I also craft a resume based on the job description. So I don't really like just, hey, here's my boilerplate resume and I blast it out I don't like the shotgun approach. It's like, look, here are the 3 companies I want to work with, and I'm on the phone and I'm crafting a resume specifically for that company. I think just the hit rate and the success rate is so much more. And the answer is yes. The resume, if crafted right, really goes hand in hand. You're kind of developing your power stories as you're crafting the resume for this particular job.
And that's what we tell people. It's like, this is a discussion guide for the conversation you want to have.
That's right.
Exactly. Wow, Sam, I see that you tripled sales at Frazzle by doing X. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for asking. I wonder why you asked it. Maybe because I wrote it down for you to ask. Yeah, I spoon-fed it to you. Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay. So you mentioned SPAR, and I think most people would be familiar with some version of CAR, PAR, STAR.
That's right.
So tell me about SPAR.
Well, so it stands for Situation, Problem, Action, Result. I was taught the STAR method, which is Situation, Task, Action, Result. And I don't want to be too finicky or picky with acronyms, but the reason I say problem is that one of the things I see as people tell their stories is that they don't create drama or tension in their stories. And so when you say task, well, I was asked to build an inventory system, that's a task. If you want to create a problem, you say we were having major problems with inventory and I was asked to build an inventory system that had never been done before. I was a lowly intern and they asked me to do it. Now I'm interested. Whoa, how is Sam going to solve this major problem? And so I like the idea of creating, overall with this SPAR story, what you're doing is you're taking them back to a specific point in time and almost imagine playing a movie clip for them, like pressing play on a movie clip that they can watch. And the reason I say that is that many people are not specific enough when they ask these questions. Tell me about a time you demonstrated leadership. Oh, I think leadership's great. And I have an open door policy and I'm, leader this, leader that. It's like, no, we're not answering the question here. You need to say, sure, let me tell you about a specific exact time, quote unquote, play the Disney movie that has a hero in it, has drama, has tension. The hero did amazing things and then everything worked out amazingly well. Yep. And so that's why I focus on the SPAR, because I want them to know this should be kind of a little bit of a dramatic story that you're telling.
I love that because people respond really, really well to stories. We remember stories.
Yes.
Well, one thing, get my thoughts collected here for a sec, is when somebody asks a very broad question, Sam. So you could, I don't know if I'm going to give a good example, but maybe it's, you're a marketer and they use social media as part of their, marketing strategy. And, Sam, tell me how you've worked with social media. Oftentimes, what we find with clients is they were asked a really broad question that could go in like a bunch of different directions. Yeah. And what they do is they try and give an encyclopedic answer to that really broad question because they don't want to leave anything out.
Yes.
And we would talk about asking a clarifying question.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you probably know where I'm going. How do we get people to kind of get to the question behind the question?
Yeah, great. Good. You know, when someone says, tell me about, your experience with social media, I think that is very broad, and that could justify sure, yeah, I have a fair amount of experience with social media. Are there any particular areas that you're most interested in that you'd like me to highlight?
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of can ask a question like that. Sometimes they're asking a question, but they're actually just kind of bad at interviewing. Hey, are you a good leader? Okay, well, yes, I am, as a matter of fact, So sometimes we can actually guide the interview ourselves and take charge. Tell me about your leadership style is you can reframe that question to be, tell me about a time when you demonstrated leadership. If they say, tell me about a time you demonstrated leadership, that you got a SPAR story coming up. Tell me about your leadership style. I think you can still use the SPAR format. Hey, great. Yeah, I'd be happy to. In fact, maybe one of the ways I can tell you about it is to give you an example of how I think I've demonstrated leadership and some of the principles. So you're still, this is an example of you're being asked a question about leadership, and now it's your turn to kind of tweak it and almost think like a politician, right? You want to answer the question, but you also kind of want to say what you want to say. And so I think sometimes when they ask vague questions like that, there are ways to recognize, okay, I know what they're asking, and I'm going to give them this story, and I'm going to answer it in this way.
Yeah. So one just thing that we have found successful is, tell me about, your experience working with data.
Uh-huh.
Okay. That can mean a few things, Sam. Do you mean first-party data, third-party data? Do you mean integrating data sets or actually predictive modeling of data? Yeah. So the way I just asked the question demonstrated my expertise
that's great.
The pillars of data. And then they go, oh, well, what I meant was,
that's
and
great.
Then we can pick one. And then this is so common is then they'll go, the reason I'm asking is we have a big problem with integrating multiple data sets. And we've really been struggling. And then they're going to go give you, as you say, just like in a job description, they're going to completely tee it up for you. So you can crush your answer to be relative to what it is that they're solving for.
That's great. I love that. Now you've clarified, and you have basically the playbook to where now you can tell your story, but weave in that story how it applies to this situation that they're dealing with.
Yeah. Exactly. So one of the things that you talk about in here is dealing with difficult. If you're a tree, Sam, what would you be?
Yeah.
And just like these weird, which I think is also back to being a bad interviewer, but that's me. But like when you're just sort of thrown with these, I mean, it could be an illegal question, just a wacky question.
Yeah.
Like how do you coach clients on what to do when it's like, where the heck did that come from?
Yeah, exactly. Where possible, you want to bring it back to your qualifications for the job, where possible. So if someone says, if you were an animal, what animal would you be? Which is just a weird question. Part of it, I think, is they're just trying to see if you can be poised in a situation like that. And you say, oh, interesting. It's okay to pause. I think I would be probably a golden retriever because I think I am kind of diligent and hardworking. And I think I actually do a pretty good job of collaborating and getting along well with others, So I think if you can answer the question, but then just provide a little bit of why behind it, that's kind of related to the job. I think that's a win on these types of questions. Sometimes it's just like a creative question, like, hey, how would you market this pen?
Yes.
So they ask that and you're like, all right, well, here we go, and I think you just kind of need to, this is particularly for marketing interviews, you just kind of need to let loose. All right, well, first of all, it could be a knife, and it can be concealed and you can just stab someone, right, there or whatever. The second thing, you can just kind of
Sam Owens, pin murderer.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And I think that if you can, I think sometimes they just want you to to just kind of play along, and you can almost have a little bit of confidence in that. All right, stupid questions. Sounds like I can give some stupid answers too. Like, let's go, I think there's a little bit of that attitude as well. With the legal questions, this one can be tricky because it's very contextual. It's not fair for someone to ask an illegal question, but at the same time, sometimes they don't even know they're doing it. It's an honest mistake. And so it could be a mistake to say, excuse me, that question's illegal, or something like that, or really put them on the spot. Even though you're technically right, you might get what you want, but not get what you want. You know what I mean? So I think there's a, if someone says, where are you from? Well, okay, I guess that's kind of an illegal question, but it's like, to me, I just say, I'm from Walnut Creek, California, no big deal. Now I get it. If this is me from California interviewing for an American job. If you're from Dubai and there's some complications there, like, I totally understand. This might be easier for me than some people. Mm-hmm. The point I'm trying to make is, with illegal questions, I think first you want to be as nice as you can. If someone says, are you married? And be like, oh, the first thing I'd say, are you married? Oh, yeah. Is there just curious, is there a reason behind the question? Is there something you want to know or something like that? And well, just wonder if you're married. Yeah, I think I actually don't mean to be offensive. I think that question's actually illegal or something like that. You can't, if you really feel like they're actually trying to pry on something, right, that's unfair. Many times though, they're just asking something that they kind of don't know is illegal. And if it's not a big deal to you, I coach my clients to just answer it and just move on.
Yeah. So I think that back on wacky questions, which is hopefully, yes, more common than illegal questions.
Of course.
Getting back to like knowing what your brand is, like, you're a political candidate. What's your platform? Yes. What are sort of the main planks of you as a candidate? And then exactly what you did with the golden retriever example is like, well, I'm good at collaborating, right? I get along with a lot of different kinds of people. I'm kind, like whatever those I knock stuff over with my tail.
Yeah. I shed my hair.
I do shed a lot. But when you've got a basis for it, and it's not just like, I don't know. And there's a poise element to that I think that people are looking for. I know, like, how many ping pong balls are on a 747 kind of thing. How many piano tuners are in Chicago? Uh-huh. Like, they are looking for, I don't care what the right answer is. I care how you start to sort of think about something. Right. How would you start to frame a problem out like that? So you do need to kind of, start to think about, something like that. But when you know your brand, and then you can say, if I was a tree or a flower or an animal or whatever, it does give you a basis. Where does your feeling? Well, okay, when somebody at the end of the interview, if it hasn't been, hopefully it's been somewhat dialogue, and it hasn't just been this interrogation, kind of this parent-child, what other questions, Mom, do you have?
Sure.
But what questions do you have for me? What do you encourage people to start kind of asking back in an interview?
Yeah, great. There are kind of two extremes to start off that I think we should avoid in this. The first one is asking questions for the sole purpose of impressing them. And the reason that I don't think you want to ask it just for that is sometimes that takes you into a space where you're kind of asking some question that they don't really know the answer to, or that makes you're trying to look smart, but they're like, I don't know. Like, asking an HR screener, I noticed in your 10K financial statement that there was this line item. What do you think about that? And they're like, well, now they're on the spot. They're like, well, I don't know. I'm in HR. Like, what, I don't know. But good job.
Thanks for making me feel dumb. I do appreciate
good job for reading the 10K, I guess. But thanks for making me feel stupid. The other extreme would be on the other end, like asking questions for just purely selfish reasons. Like, hey, like how long would it take for me to get a raise here? Do you think? Like, how fast could I get promoted? Or, like stuff. Let's be honest. We all kind of want to know those questions. They're the answers to those questions. But maybe ask some of that to, like, after you have an offer, or something like that. So what I usually say is ask a question that you are genuinely interested in knowing. that the person is uniquely qualified to answer that's related to the job. And so, hey, can you talk to me about how you feel about the culture of your department is and what successful people are typically like. How do people excel here? Can you tell me about the next 3 years and what things you're most excited about and what things that are do you think your biggest challenges? Stuff like that, where they're like, oh, interesting. I'm talking about my business, but it also applies to you because if you work on this business, this is something you're going to eventually want to know. And so those can be rich discussions. And then just a housekeeping item. They say, what questions do you have for me? And there's 1 minute left. I always do a time check. Hey, I do have some questions, but I want to be respectful of your time. How are we looking here? And they'll say, oh, yeah, I got a hard stop. Or they'll say, no problem. Yeah, well, I got time. It's always a good thing to do.
What do you think about asking for specific feedback?
Yeah, good question. I think this one depends on the vibe of the interview. There's no set answer. Like there's been times when I've interviewed where I've said, hey, I just want to get your sense on how you feel like I'd be a fit in this organization, or opportunities that you think, I think one way to do this also, instead of asking for feedback, because sometimes they're like, well, I don't want to give that feedback yet. I want to digest. I kind of like one way to get at this is just say, hey, I just want to make sure, first of all, I'm super interested in this. And so I just want to make sure that I've been able to answer all your questions. Are there any concerns or things that I can clarify before we finish here? That's a way for them maybe not to give feedback, but at least an opportunity for them to kind of, if there's any lingering doubts, just be like, well, yeah, I think the one thing I would want to talk about is this. Or they'll say, nope, I'm good. I mean, it's up to them.
Right.
But I like doing something like that because it feels a little less confrontational than be like, all right, what feedback do you have for me?
Well, no, I'm glad that you jumped to that because I wasn't sure where you would go with this. So, there's a model that says basically, Sam, I've really enjoyed our time together. I'm super pumped about this opportunity. I guess I'm curious from your side, what gives you the most confidence based on what you've learned about me so far that I would be a good fit in this role? Well, gosh, you've marketed great brands. You've got big company experience. You've worked in small environments, so you know how to be scrappy. So, yeah, and I think you'd be a great culture fit.
Yeah.
On the other, now this is the salesperson in me. On the other side, are there any concerns or anything that would make you pause for my fit for this role?
Yeah.
I mean, ideally, look, I wish you had more automotive experience, but other than that, I think you did great. So just kind of on a relative basis, based on that, how would you sort of net that out, kind of the positives versus the automotive thing?
Yeah.
Honestly, we've got 1,000 people here that know about cars. You're uniquely qualified here. You asked me a question, I answered it. Or I could say, I wish you had more automotive experience. And you go, I am so sorry. At Ogilvy, I was on our Ford team.
Yeah.
That was on page 2.5 of my resume, but I've actually worked 2 years in the car business.
Yeah.
As a salesperson, and this is a sales call, that's what an interview is. It is a sales call.
Yeah.
Is I want to know the objections because you're thinking them. And once that Zoom window closes or that conference room door closes, you're not going to get the feedback. And what we hear from clients, I don't know, I think it went pretty well. Like I got on with Sam, he's a super nice guy. We laughed a lot, and I think it went pretty well.
Yeah.
But what I didn't know was Sam really wishes I had more automotive experience because he thinks that's really important. And he doesn't want to take the time to teach me that industry and all the nuances of that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It went really well, but I didn't get the job.
Why do you think that is, Sam? I don't know. Because I thought we got on really well. And the job description of me looked like a great fit.
Yeah. Right.
And so what ends up happening is that either there's a clarification. Actually, I do have auto from my time at Ogilvy. And blah, blah, oh, shit, I learned that. Didn't know that. Yeah. Or you can reframe it on a relative basis. How important is that against, how you kind of think about fit for this role?
Yeah, I really like that.
It's really important, Bob, if I'm being honest with you,
Yeah.
I've got a strong, at least I know, right?
Yes.
At least I know.
Right.
Or they can say, again, hey, it's number 4 out of 5 things. It's not the most important thing, but it's a thing. Okay, well, at least I've got, some notion of how important that was if I don't get the role.
Yeah, that's great. That I really like that. This strikes me also as something that would really benefit with practice. The way
Yes.
you solicit feedback in a way that's not off-putting, but in a way that continues to enhance the conversation can be a very positive thing. But I think practice is the key on this one.
It's got to be in your words. That's the
Yeah.
thing. It's got to feel natural coming out of your mouth. You
Right.
talked about scripting earlier, and like if it feels scripted, you're going to be awkward. It's going to sound awkward, and it's not going to be great. But if you can say it in a way that sounds like you, then it can be really effective for pointing out some stuff. Okay. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that I would be completely remiss as your podcast host of not asking you?
Okay. The only thing I'd want to say is this. It's a weird economy right now in that unemployment figures look good. Politicians are saying, hey, everything's great. But I'm actually seeing, particularly with more, I don't even know if white collar is the right term anymore, but just more executive kind of office type positions. I'm seeing actually kind of a mixed bag. I think there's companies that are holding back a little bit, and just some interesting trends that are hard to kind of tease out. And I think there are people who are discouraged out there. The one thing I would just want to say to everyone is that they will, if you're looking for a job and you're discouraged, you will get a job. Yeah. And I'm positive you will get a job. It might not happen tomorrow as fast as you want, but every single client I've worked with, and just people I've observed who are like, oh, it's been so hard, they wind up getting jobs. Yes. And so that was just the one thing I just want to share with the listeners, is that it's going to work out. You're going to get a job.
Yes. Thank you for saying that. I think that so much of this is around encouragement. Now, what you're teaching are real skills. So it's one thing to get pumped up and you got this, Tiger, right? But like learning real skills, like you're teaching people in your book, which is phenomenal. Yeah. But there is this encouragement piece. I wrote a post yesterday on LinkedIn that said, no doesn't mean never. It just means not yet. That's right. Great. And that people need to hear that, like, because there's so much, I'd say the road to yes is littered with no. And it can be so discouraging for people. So I just really appreciate it. And you're right. This is a particularly weird time that companies are very reluctant because they overhired, which led to all the layoffs. And now they're being, more cautious.
Yes.
And they don't have enough talent acquisition people. So the processes are slow and kludgy, and people think it's them. And I'm like, it's not you. It's the process or the chaos, whatever it really is. But I appreciate it. So if people want to get, I hate job interviews, how do they, and maybe reshape their mind on that, how do they get a copy of the book?
Yeah. So it's on Amazon, Target, Barnes & Nobles, Audible. And if you have, I have Spotify Premium. It's kind of, you can listen to it. It's included in Premium, I guess. I didn't know it would be, but it is. I looked at it today. So,
awesome.
So there's lots of different ways you can get it. I did the audiobook, which is a fun, kind of wild experience. So it's my voice on it.
You were the reader?
I was a reader. Right now on Amazon, I think the audiobook is a little bit cheaper than the actual print book. So yeah, that's the first way to get it. And then the other way to just reach me is just connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn all the time, and that's my thing.
So and that's the other thing that I'll share with people is please follow Sam on LinkedIn. Like I said, there's some dodgy advice out there, and then there's some great advice. And Sam, you're one of the folks who are out there sharing really good advice with people and encouragement, which again, I think is at least as important. So I love the book. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Bob. It's such a great conversation.
No, awesome. So again, we really encourage you to get I Hate Job Interviews by Sam Owens and follow him on LinkedIn. And again, I'm Bob Goodwin with Career Club. Thank you so much for investing a few minutes of your day. And I hope to see you on an upcoming Thursday at 1:00 Eastern. So thanks again, Sam. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay, cheers. Bye-bye.